Hi guys, so I have showed you that I do have a few servers at home, and I'd like to show you each and every one of them which does what. Let's start with the bottom one, which is the VMware ESXi 5.5 server. I'll show you what I mainly use it for and what I mainly don't use it for, which I will do in the future. Firstly, to tell you the speed of this client is basically a bit too slow because I'm using a VPN to make connection because I'm not at home. So we have two categories in my server. So firstly, we can see that it's a 16 core server, so there's plenty of room still left. So first, there are two sections. First is the production server section. The second is the testing section. The production section has a section which is my home section that is running my network. First, it is a client, network management, so a management client, which are two Windows 7 based clients. Then there's an XP client that is running the UniFi Wi-Fi. Of course, this will be very slow because my upload speed is 1 megabit, if you remember. So this is running the Ubiquiti UniFi controller, which I'll show you in a different video. But this client needs to, this PC basically, this virtual machine basically is running all the time. It has 256 megabytes of RAM allocated to it, and it's not using much processing power at all. So with that done, there's another section which isn't populated yet, but this is the company VMs, which will have some COM port redirection to it, but that's only coming in the future. Next, we come to the database server, which it has which basically is running a MySQL server on it, and this is a Java applet server, which is running basically a Java app on it, just like a Minecraft server. So that's what this is doing, is basically it's gathering data and it's putting it into my database server that has crons running on it, which will export the data. This is in production at this point in time, and it's being used by a few users. But as you can see, the code is quite well optimized, so therefore it's not using much power. It is using quite a bit when there are many users online and all of them are pulling different pages. There are objects which are CSS and they have to be rendered, which makes CPU usage a little high. And then there is the testing part, which is what I mainly have the server for. I have two networks. This has a different input network. This is connected to my actual network, so my main network, and this is coming from a different internet input, as I have two incoming internet connections in my house. So basically, I was testing DTWRT in a VirtualBox, in a virtual machine, but I'm using pfSense mainly, virtualize, which is working quite well actually. These are off due to the fact that at night I try not to stress the CPU that much so that it doesn't have too much power draw, because in the morning we have free power. So I'm now actually right in the middle of testing a mail server, but there are OwnCloud servers and web servers and CentOS test servers as well running. I'll show you a little bit about the configuration of the server. For example, what the Dell PowerEdge servers provide you with is it tells you exact power usages at each and every point in time. And this can also send emails if there are issues. So if there's a power failure or one power supply dies, I get red crosses everywhere. This also talks about the fan speed, which basically I know that if the fan speed ramps up from here, it is probably quite noisy as well. The other quite useful use for this is that it says the ambient temperature, which basically there is a temperature sensor right at the intake of the server, which is pulling fresh air in, and that's the temperature of it. So this was my vSphere client. Actually, I'll show you the networking part because there are quite a few networking switches. Even there are some which, for example, the alternative networks. There is the WAN, which has just one interface plugged in, and this is going onto another switch, which is a LAN. So, and this is why at this point in time there are two routers connected to it, but I'll change that in the near future. I also want to sort of test with the multi-WAN capability of pfSense. So this pfSense network, the pfSense on the first Linux test network, I want to connect with the alternative WAN and run some tests and things. These are the sort of things that I'm doing. What I didn't tell you is the storage. Now, oops. Now the storage of this server is basically done by and I'm clicking on the wrong buttons at this point in time. But the storage is done by the RAID 5 array, which is on the server, is done by the Pretz 5i, which is built into my Dell PowerEdge R900, and it has 4 1TB WD RAID hard drives, which as I said is running in RAID 5. Now this makes it available this makes 2.73 terabytes available, of which 500 is used, and this storage isn't used for data storage, as only small amounts of data, for example well, I wouldn't call this database small, but that's only a few gigabytes. So because I have a NAS server, which I'll show you after this. So this server the performance of the server is slightly affected by the fact that the hardware acceleration is not supported on the Pretz 5i controller, RAID controller by Dell. It is supported on the Pretz 6, but I'm running a Pretz 5i at this point in time. I'm thinking about upgrading. So the next server I would like to show you is my NAS server. There is a server in between, which is the Dell PowerEdge 1950, but I'm currently upgrading my Windows server, Windows 2012 server, to that, but I'm missing a few drives to be able to do that, so I'm a bit pushed with that. I need to wait until the drives come in, which will be also WD RAID drives, but in 2.5-inch manner. So this FreeNAS is running on a FreeBSD base. Basically, most of you probably know what FreeNAS is, and it's running on a dual-core 2.5 GHz box, but mainly it has 4 gigs of RAM, and that is exactly my issue with this box. That I'm a bit short on random access memory because the ZFS storages consume so much RAM that basically plugins and jails they only have a limited amount of space left, basically we only have 200 megs, well, let's say 300 megs free from the 4 gigabytes. This server has a few drives. It's got, let's do it this way. It's got, in the RAID, it's got 3 1 terabyte WD greens. That's from the era before the red drives came out. They are all running the 1.4 firmware with the ZFS RAID support, so they're not falling out of the RAID all of a sudden. So this is running on the RAID part of that. And there's another WD 2 terabyte green drive, which I happen to have around, which I store things on. Mainly I torrent on it, so I use the transmission torrenting client to torrent on it. Shadow copying is enabled, so every 12 hours it is taking shadow copies when we're mainly using it, which means that each file has file history in Windows available. Okay, so that's done. The next server I would like to show you, which isn't a server, it's just an access gateway, is the pfSense box that I'm running. It is basically as stable as a rock because I only need to shut it down or restart it whenever I need to reorganize the servers or I have some power outages sometimes. It's basically running on a dual core hyper-threaded Atom, but because this is running FreeBSD, hyper-threading is disregarded by pfSense. So therefore my CPU load is always starting with a 1 because the system basically doesn't know exactly what to do, which does bring me on to the next point, that the gigabit interfaces connected seem to be able to do gigabit throughput, although however it's more sort of maximum 200 megabits per second. pfSense isn't running DHCP, nor is it running DNS, nor nothing. Basically this is all forwarded onto my Windows server, which is a dedicated server. All this is doing is a firewall, and it's an access gateway for the network to pass to the internet. There is a transparent modem right before it though as well. So right above the pfSense box, basically there is only just a client, just a Windows 7 client PC, to be able to manage network with there and be able to have some USB capabilities, physical USB capabilities, as some devices, some remote management devices have programming capabilities that I develop on, that I and some other users develop on. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. This was Peter, aka QQTYIN.